Hello and welcome to Go Tell It on the Mountain, a channel inspired by God meant for sharing His Word with others. Hi, I'm Heather, and I'm reading the Bible in chronological order, and I'm using an NIV Bible that's listed in the description of this video. And we're reading the Bible chronologically. On the last episode, we read Exodus 13, chapter 13, verse 17 through chapter 15, and that was about the crossing of the Red Sea, celebration song of Moses and Miriam, and then the water at Marah. In today's episode, we're going to read chapters 16 through 18, which is when God gives manna and quail to the Israelites, and also water, and the battle with the Amalekites, and then when Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, visits them. So I look forward to this reading with you, and the comments after that. Feel free to stick around for those. Let's have a word of prayer. Father in heaven, thank you for your word. Thank you for our time together, reading your word and working through some comments and thoughts about it. Father, please open our eyes to what we read, our ears to what we hear, our minds to understand, and our hearts to accept. Thank you, Father. Amen. Okay. So, chapter 16, Exodus chapter 16. Manna and quail. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt! There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us?" Moses also said, "You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening, and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not grumbling against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses told Aaron, "Say to the entire Israelite community, 'Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.'" While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it out by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is to keep any of it until morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots on it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was white like coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for generations to come." As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Chapter 17, Water from the Rock. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of Sin, traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So they quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." But Moses replied, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people. Take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile. And go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Starting at verse 7, the Amalekites defeated. The Amalekites came and attacked the Israelites at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose some of our men and go out to fight the Amalekites. Tomorrow I will stand up on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands." So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this on a scroll as something to be remembered, and make sure that Joshua hears it, because I will completely blot out the name of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and called it, "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Because hands were lifted up against the throne of the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation." Chapter 18, Jethro visits Moses. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and father-in-law of Moses, heard of everything God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her 2 sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." And the other was named Eleazar, for he said, "My father's God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh." Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wife, came to him in the wilderness, where he was camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, "I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons." So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and then went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and about all the hardships they had met along the way and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things the Lord had done for Israel in rescuing them from the hand of the Egyptians. He said, "Praise be to the Lord, who rescued you from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, who rescued the people from the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all the other gods, for he did this to those who had treated Israel arrogantly." Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God, and Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day, Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you alone sit as judge, while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, "What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men from all the people, men who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you will be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied." Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided for themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country. That's today's reading. Get my computer to come back. There we go. Okay, comments on this reading. So God provides the manna and the quail. The Israelites are so dramatic, and we talked about that in the last episode. they just sound like they preferred slavery. If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death. It's just they keep doing that. Then the Lord providing manna. So I knew that God provided manna and that they ate it for 40 years. That's kind of where it ended. To be honest with you, if I had more details, I didn't really pay attention to them. So I didn't realize the instructions for how to handle manna was a test to see if they would even follow his instructions to begin with. And if they didn't follow it and they tried to save some for the next morning, it would be ruined. And it was when they did try to do that. Nor did I realize there was instructions for how much to collect. And that was, when you think about how much that was, an omer, that's about 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms. And it says take an omer for each person you have in your tent. So the manna was not eaten directly. You had to actually prepare it into a bread or a cake. So I kind of think of it as like, so I think I said it was wafers. So they had to grind it and then make it into bread or cake. So I always thought they ate the wafers directly and they subsisted on wafers for 40 years. And I always thought, oh, that's so gross. And I didn't even realize or pay attention to the fact they had quail in the evenings. So like they had meat as well, which they had their own flocks. So I'm not quite sure why they didn't eat off their own flocks, but no matter. The manna in the morning, quail in the evening. Yeah. So I was glad that they had the quail and not just the manna. And the manna wasn't eating wafers alone, that they actually did something and turned it into bread. And that just feels like a lot to me, like 3 pounds worth of that for each person. I mean, unless when you grind it up, it's not much bread for the day. It was enough to give them food for the day. And then they got the next day's worth until the 6th day when they had to get 2 days worth. And there would be 2 days worth for everyone so they could make it. So that on the Sabbath, they didn't have to work for it. They just were able to eat. Now, this reading, a lot of people were frustrated. So the Israelites were frustrated that they didn't have food and water. And then Moses and Aaron were frustrated with the Israelites grumbling at them. And even the Lord was frustrated with the Israelites not following instructions and trying to hoard food and look for manna on the Sabbath. Because it even says, how long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? And it had to be frustrating to the Lord for the people to not follow his instructions after everything he did to free them and get them away from the Egyptians and cross the Red Sea, all the plagues, like all the things he did so that the Egyptians would know he is God. But for them to still be frustrated, even with, all he did to get them there as the pillar of cloud to lead them for all that time and leading them where they would go. So yeah, I could see how he would be frustrated too. Now the jar of manna that the Lord instructed Moses to keep an omer of manna as a reminder of what he did for them, right? And then I kind of never knew that one, and I'm curious if you had known about it. And then it says that Aaron puts the jar of omer with the tablets of the covenant law. And so I was like, what tablets? Because we haven't read about tablets yet, right? We know they're coming for the 10 Commandments, but we don't know about this yet. So I was looking it up, and what I found said that's believed that Joshua added this text after Moses' death, and that the jar and other relics were lost in 70 AD when the temple was destroyed, and all traces of the ark and its covenants were gone. All right, take a quick drink. Okay, so when it says 40 years of manna, so kind of like the jar, that seemed a little out of place because most of this is in chronological order, but once in a while we have these little pops of information. So the shortest coastal route was 200 to 250 miles. And we know that at first God did not want them to go that way because of the Philistines, because he thought that the Israelites might become afraid and hijack back to, or hightail back to Egypt. So we'll see how they came to roam the desert. As I always heard about them roaming the desert for 40 years. So it did mention that they ate it for 40 years, and we'll get some more information. But there's not actually a whole lot of information about that 40 years. The Bible is kind of mysteriously void of that information. When the Lord stands before Moses at the rock, so I knew that the Lord had told Moses to strike the rock so that water would come out. But I didn't know that the Lord said he would stand before Moses at the rock. So what a miracle that had to be to witness. The battle with the Amalekites, figured out from listening to a Bible reading how to say that one. So Joshua is first mentioned in chapter 17:9 when Moses instructs him to take some men to go fight the Amalekites. Then, to me, the faith and the connection with the Lord is really incredible when you think about the Israelites winning as long as Moses had his staff raised. And I wonder if Aaron and Hur grew tired as they held Moses' hands up. Just an anecdotal thing. And then this is the first time when they won the battle, the first time when God commands something to be written down. And it's thought that Joshua was the one who wrote it down, and it was important for him to hear it because he would become Moses' assistant and also later his successor. Now, spoiler alert, God said that he would completely blot out Amalek, and eventually the Amalekites were wiped out. Later we'll read that, and it does take generations to do, but he did do that. Now, Moses built an altar. What did it look like? How big was it? These are the things that my mind asks. I do like the name of it, The Lord is my banner. And the prophecy that the Lord will be at war against the Amalekites from generation to generation came to be, as I just said in my spoiler alert. Now, Jethro visiting Moses, this is the first time in this passage when we find out that Moses sent his wife and sons to Jethro, because they went with him to Egypt. So and it never says when he sent them back, so we'll never know, but those are the things that I'm curious about. And then this is also when we learn the second son's name, because we'd previously learned that his first son's name, Gershom, meant a foreigner there. I am a foreigner there. And so Eliezer is my God is helper. And Jethro, now he was a Midianite priest, and they did worship God. I kind of thought they didn't for some reason, but when I looked it up, they did worship God. And so Moses tells them everything. He'd heard about everything God had done, so he tells them about it all. And after he heard it, he says, now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods. Like, this confirmed what he believed, but it confirmed it for him. And I love that Aaron brought the Israelite leaders so they could have the celebration meal together with the sacrifice. I just feel like that's a lot of respect and welcome and celebration for them. Now, this passage is also the first time when the Bible has an explicit recommendation for delegation in the Bible. So, Moses was humble enough to listen to Jethro and his suggestion to basically make judges, so that Moses wasn't alone in figuring out how to handle people's issues with each other and what God's decrees would be. And so he was to teach others, and he did it, and that would help him carry the load. I like that he was humble enough and not too proud because of his relationship with the Lord to be like, well, only I can do it. So, it just seems similar to our structure for adjudication, right, today. And this is going to lead into the 10 Commandments, like to the reading of it. That'll be our next reading, and God's laws and other commands that we'll be getting to in time. Finally, the history. Okay. So when I was reading this, it just was really striking me how Moses was like a shepherd to the Israelites. He was relaying God's commands to him. And there's going to be a whole lot more. And it just boggles my mind that the detail that is in these laws we're going to read, that Moses could remember them to relay them and then to keep them. But this just was really strikingly similar to Christ to me. He was a shepherd for the people. So, bringing them to God, because it's obviously before Christ, but caring for them, right? Showing them the way, what the Lord, sharing with them what the Lord commanded. And so when I was looking it up, I found a passage that said the history of the Exodus is a strong and profound example and foreshadowing of how the Lord is a shepherd, providing everything for the flock. Here, the Israelites. Moses was the physical shepherd, liaising between God and the people, and Jesus is the ultimate redeemer, laying his life down for the flock. Okay, that's it for today. So please like, subscribe, and share. Feel free to add any other comments. Anything I didn't mention that struck you, or if you have any thoughts on what I've shared, feel free to add that. Please be productive and constructive. I do not monetize this channel, so if you're getting ads, it's not me. That's just YouTube. And our next episode, we will read at Mount Sinai and the 10 Commandments. Yeah, just those 2 chapters. Because after that, we start getting into a lot of laws. All right, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for all that you do for us. Thank you for all that you did for the Israelites. Thank you for all that you do for us every day in our lives that we notice and don't notice. Sometimes notice way later after you've already done it. Father, please be with us in everything that we do. We appreciate so much the grace that you have for us, your love, your protection, your healing. And Father, I just lift up everyone to you and all that their needs. And I thank you for all that you're going to do for us and give us. And I thank you for your angelic helpers, your angelic assistants, your angel army. And I call upon them to just surround us and protect us, Lord. Thank you for all that you are. In your name I pray. Amen. All right, well, like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. And until next time, you have a blessed day.